Welcome back, Timeline. I'm your host, Tania, and this is the most interesting people on my timeline, a series and archive dedicated to exploring the digital space and how it affects the lives and work of my most interesting online friends. If you're new here, hi, welcome to the Timeline. On this podcast, we talk about social media, fandoms, internet culture, but most importantly, we talk about it with interesting people in various fields who I've had the pleasure of engaging with online and IRL. This is an immigrant-led podcast, and even though this season I'm talking about horror as a genre, there are very real horrors happening to our immigrant community. So I urge all of y'all to educate yourselves and find ways to uplift and protect our community. And in the description box, I've also linked a couple of GoFundMes for families whose loved ones have been taken, as well as some immigrant orgs doing amazing work, including the Undocumented Filmmakers Collective. So make sure to support immigrants, our families, and our art today and every day. Timeline, thank you for joining us on this penultimate episode of our Summerween season. If you don't know what Summerween is, it is the practice of celebrating Halloween in the summer, hence Summerween. And I know some of y'all are already coming out of summer and y'all are fully in like back to school or fall mode, but I beg y'all to keep your Summerween hat on just for a little longer, as next week we have our season finale. But first, we have today's guest. Today's episode features spooky filmmaker and badass community organizer Edgar Aquino-Huerta. As always, you can listen to all episodes anywhere you get your podcast, as well as watch a visual version on Spotify and YouTube. You can find all show notes and links in the description box of whatever platform you're listening on, or at taniadoes.com/interesting people. Welcome to this episode of The Most Interesting People on My Timeline. Let me introduce y'all to Edgar.
My name is Edgar Aquino-Huerta. I am originally from Puebla, Mexico, and I live in South Jersey. I am many things. I'm a filmmaker with a focus in screenwriting and directing, but I'm also a community outreach. So I'm pretty involved in my community in South Jersey when it comes to the undocumented community and the farm worker community.
Could you talk about a little bit about just, you're talking about being a filmmaker and like the work that you do with farm workers. But when we were talking before, you also mentioned how like horror was kind of like you kind of incorporate that a little bit. So can you kind of like take us through your origins, how horror and watching horror movies led you to become like a filmmaker?
So I came to the US when I was 2 years old. Obviously, my first language is Spanish, and I didn't go to school until maybe when I was 5 years old. So prior to that, I didn't know any English. And my brother and I, we had this babysitter. I remember her name. It was Mimi, and the my mom would drop her in the mornings, and she'll pick us up at night. So we're already facing that trauma of being away from your parents. And like that was like my introduction to anxiety, but that was also my introduction to fear because when I went um on one of those days, her kids had the ghost face mask from Scream, and they would scare us. So I don't know, like I was just a very scared little boy, but I always recognized that mask. Fast forward to when I get older, we started watching Goosebumps, my brother and I. Even though the show was in English, we liked it, and we even though we didn't understand any of what they were saying, we understood the story, and it was just so funny because this is when I was already in preschool. We would come back from school, and then my brother and I would run into the room and would be like, "Oh, like ya va a empezar el show, la de tri 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 tri." Like we would start making the sound of the intro song, and I liked it. I mean, I don't know. I guess I liked the feeling of like knowing that it's fake, and just like the way it just made me like the suspense, the way the suspense made me feel. So that's how I learned English, through Goosebumps. But when I was in second grade, I had a better understanding on things, and I have cousins in New York that we would visit many times out of the year, and they're all horror lovers. Like when I tell you que mi prima, su casa like in her room, it was literally a blockbuster. Like you know how when you would go to, I don't, did you ever go to Blockbuster in the past?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So you know how the horror section is always the creepy section. because they have the retro uh the movie covers. And then I remember that one movie, that cover was just so scary. And so the vibes that the horror section and Blockbuster gave me, that was literally how my cousin's room was. So and she had like all the 80s slashers. So oh yeah, all the 80s and 90s slashers. So through visiting her and my other cousins, that's how I was introduced to the slasher genre. But I never saw Scream. I was only familiar with The Mask because of my babysitter, but I never saw it until I was in second grade. And I had seen a snippet of it at my cousin's house. And I'm like, I'm very curious, like, to know to actually watch the movie. And I'm like, but I don't know what it's called because then I don't even know what the character, I don't even know what he's called because I know Freddy, I know Jason, I know Chucky, but I'm like, but what is this character called? I don't even know its name. How do I even look for this movie? So my cousin was like, oh yeah, the name is Scream. And I was like, oh, that's a like that's a very basic title for a movie. So my madrina, she would always give me a weekly allowance. She would give me like $5 every Sunday, like para mi domingo. And I saved up money so that when my mom had the chance to take us to the flea market, I would go and search for this specific movie. So we had went to the flea market and I saw Scream literally at like many tables, the VHS version, and put in the cover. You could see Drew Barrymore, which I didn't even know she was in that movie because the little snippet of what I saw, she wasn't in it. So I was like, oh, Drew Barrymore's in it. Oh, so she must be the main character then because I know her from Charlie's Angels. I know her from E.T. I know her from like these rom-coms that I've seen before. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, so then maybe it's not that scary then because she's a friendly face, right? So I bought the one with her face on the cover because they marketed this movie for her to look like the main character. So I bought it. I went inside my mom's room. I put the movie on. I saw it by myself, turned off the lights, grabbed my little blanket, put the movie on, and just those first 15 minutes had me messed up because I just thought that Joe Barrymore was the main character. And I was like, damn, like, well, what did I just watch? And I'm like, if this movie in the first 15 minutes made me feel the way I feel now, like introduced me to a new positive, I guess, a new positive way of fear, but like for movies, then I can only imagine what the rest of the movie is like. So I had to step away from the movie for a few days, and then I went back to it later on, and then I saw the whole thing, and I really liked it, and I saw it many times because it was maybe the only horror movie I owned, and my mom didn't even know that it was a horror movie because I mean the title, the poster, the movie poster, it didn't even show the mask, so she didn't even know that it was a horror movie that that I was watching. And I studied the hell out of that movie. That's when I knew what a director was. When I saw what a producer was, I was studying the credits. I even had the subtitles on, so I learned the script. I learned the lines, and and I don't know. I just really liked it, and then that kind of gave me a a hunger for writing my own scary stories. Eventually, I started reenacting the movie, but in my own version with my toys, with my action figures, and I was just creating Mexican characters based off of my family members, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how it started.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I mean, a lot of people that I've been t speaking to with this series, like they don't get into horror until like into adulthood. Um, that being said, and I think I'm the same. I didn't really appreciate horror until I was older, but like you as a kid, you were like sitting down watching Scream. Like I feel like my cousin showed me like a bunch of horror movies. I was like, I don't want to play with you guys. But like so yeah, so everything like before when I was a kid, like I guess I didn't appreciate with horror, but it's really cool that you did and that kind of you were like, I'm gonna do my own version of it.
Hmm.
And like, yeah, like just to get the creative juices flowing. When was the first time that like you were like, I'm actually gonna write something, like write a proper script?
So I didn't write an actual script until maybe until I was older, but I started writing short stories because I was a very intrigued little boy. So I was always in adult conversations. And era yo bien chismoso. I just wanted to know what the adults were talking about, especially when they would talk about horror stories, like stuff that was happening in Mexico, even stuff that was happening here. And I'm there just listening to them, and I'm like getting all these ideas so that I can go home and start writing in my little notebook. Now that I think about it, I did write a script when I was little because my friends and I, we would play hide and seek, but we would have our own version of hide and seek. It was like hide and seek slash monster. We would call it monster, but I would give them scripts because um I would tell them that since I want to make movies when I'm older, we're gonna be playing a movie right now, and the movie's called Monster. And then depending on the level of favoritism I have of my cousins, depending on who the final girl was. So the final girl was always my prima. Her name is Dulce. And she was always the final girl because she was always my favorite cousin. And so it was just funny because my cousins would be like, "Can I be your favorite cousin for the day? Because I want to survive at least one game." And it was fun. Like we had so much fun. I don't even know like how or what exactly I wrote in those scripts other than when they had to scream, when they had to start running, who was gonna be the first one to get caught. But nobody knew where everybody was hiding. Only the ones that had it in their script. So I kind of already had an idea based off of me paying attention to Scream on how to develop this little kid script for this game.
That's so funny. Dude, like I feel like everyone has like the cousin talent shows or like you have like the cousin games. So it's really cool that you brought like that it was just natural for you to like include your family into that. Um and I was gonna say like with Cheesemate too, like at least for me, like my favorite stories are the ones that are like personal, like within the family, like y'all know the scary story or like the Cheesemate. So and I talked about this with another guest, like Cheesemology is the best. It's the best.
That's a that's a cool word. I've never heard of that.
Right? Yeah, like I got it from her. So it was, yeah, it's just really cool to think about how much also like just storytelling is very inherent in like our
Mhm.
culture and stuff, and like that's like what helped you. But yeah, like I mean, let's talk about your like current work. So like, these are your origins and you eventually became like a filmmaker and a screenwriter. So what are some of your projects and for the listeners who don't know, the reason, you're a guest is because one of the scripts that you've worked on is a horror script. But yeah, can you take us through some of your projects?
So, horror has always been, well, yeah, horror is my origin. But obviously, once you get older, you kind of mature and you're introduced to new stories and you start writing more real stories. Um, so that's kind of what the guy I transitioned from writing horror stories into writing real life stories. As I got older, when I became a teenager, I was writing more about immigration. I was writing more about the farm worker struggle. I was writing stories similar to Stand and Deliver, like those type of movies, because I wanted to make those type of movies. So I just felt like being a community organizer, being an advocate for immigrants, I just felt like I wasn't allowed to be creative freely with horror because I just felt like, well, I'm not helping anybody by telling these stories, so maybe I should just stick to the narrative of what I already belong to, which is to uplift immigrant stories. So as I started writing, different stuff, short scripts, feature scripts, which I haven't developed yet. But in 2022, when I went to the New Filmmakers LA series, which the Indaki Filmmakers Collective had a few of our members spotlighted and they had their short film screened. I had seen a short film done by by Nirov. I'm not sure if his film is considered film, but to me it was. It was very suspenseful, but it was also very cultural and like I can see through him. Like I can see through him and I can see his writing. And I'm like, wait, we are allowed to tell our own stories, especially if it's in the horror genre, because there are stories and we can tell them any way that we want to. So watching his short film gave me that, I don't want to say that the permission, but it gave me like the okay, then I feel like I can do the same. So that's when I started rewriting. That's when I started picking up the short stories that I had when I was a little kid. And I'm like, okay, I'm older now. And then when I started remembering them and I was writing them, I was like, oh, like these stories actually have culture to them. I was literally writing as a little boy, I was writing what I was seeing. Just the only difference is that um the real antagonist is not like the president, but in the script, the antagonist is something else, like an entity or something. But that was like legit writing what I was seeing as a little boy. So I had picked up this short story that was supposed to be about this family that had committed a mistake a long time ago, and that mistake came back in the future to kind of like for revenge. It was like it was a slasher about a Mexican family and about like family secrets. So that's where Jornalero came from. And so I had mixed that that story with a farm worker story that I already had. And I just put both of them together and it just made so much sense because both stories had similar that they both had similar backgrounds. They both have similar themes. And it's kind of the theme of when society creates a monster. And I just enjoyed writing it. And I remember I sent it to I sent it to Nerov, and he had told me like, wow, like that I think you actually found the something that you truly enjoy, and in the horror genre. And I was like, it was so easy to write. I mean, writing the first draft was so easy to me because I was just writing whatever was in my head. But then the development and then making it better and then doing the rewrites, that was the hard part. Because this is when I was like, okay, now I have to actually make it make sense. I have to make the dialogue poetic because it's a short film. I have to cut down characters. I have to make this 10-minute short film look good, which is it's now called Hay algo en la finca.
I love that. I mean, shout out Nirov, like I love the work too, but it's really cool that you came about it that way. And I will say I had watched your short Made in America before, like and even then I know it's not like specifically horror, but it had like also these suspenseful
Mhm.
elements too that I was that like
Yeah.
now knowing you like I can pick up like where that like I guess inspiration came from. And with Jornalero, like I'd also read like a very, very early version of the script. And I just thought it was so different in that like kind of how you said like society makes a monster. And I think of films like Joker and stuff where like,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah.
this is like humanizing a quote unquote villain and how it's very accepted. Or like people are like, yeah, look, like the society made him be the Joker or whatever. And with yours, with Jornalero, like it's at least with immigrant stories, sometimes I feel like people are less open to like us becoming villains or whatever, or like this caused us to
Mhm.
be this monster. So I think it's very your story is very interesting in that way, in playing around with that of like we get to be angry too, or like sometimes things do get to us as well, and we lash out, right? So I think that that's very inspiring too from your.
No, thank you. And I was trying to be very careful with that part because you're right. Well, so I definitely got inspiration from Joker, from Pearl. I don't know if you've seen Pearl, or I don't know if you've ever seen Perfume de Violeta.
I haven't watched that one. I'm gonna add it to my list.
You need to watch that one. That one is no, I'm not gonna spoil it, but you need to watch that one. So I got inspiration from all these movies. And Perfume de Violeta is just, oh my God, it's just, you have to watch it. And that's the movie that gave me more insight on how it can look like when society creates a monster in Mexico. And but again, I was trying to be very careful because I don't want to continue to join part of the narrative of what we already see, people dehumanizing our stories, farm workers, immigrants. And I'm like, so how do I tell this story but also be careful with it? And that's the part that I struggled with the most. Um, it took research, it took talking to different people, talking to farm workers. And that's kind of how I was able to develop that part of the why. And getting feedback from other organizers, getting feedback from other horror filmmakers, just mixing those two together was just so important to me because that made such a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that that's so like cool how you subverted that. And like, yeah, like you said, like there's already so much villainization of us that if we are going to touch on those things, like be a little bit more careful. But that's why I think,
Mhm.
it's important to have immigrants making work because we're gonna get the intricacies and like the complicated parts of that. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that about your work. And speaking of your work, like you have won like international awards, right? It was like with the Wilson Center, I believe. Could you talk about that and just like, because you are an organizer as well, and you've talked about how sometimes you feel like that has been conflicting with like your creative
Mhm.
parts, like, but how does that feel like to kind of like get that validation and have it, yeah, like that validation of you combining your work in that way?
I'm gonna answer also a question that you had asked before that I didn't answer. With Made in America. So Made in America, I had started writing that script in 2017. Literally my first day of school at a 4-year, at a 4-year school at a university. Um, and I started writing it on September 5th, 2017, when Trump rescinded DACA. And so obviously that came with a lot of fear. And then I kept asking myself, because at the time I was working at a greenhouse, so I kept asking myself, what if he terminates DACA, my work permit expires, and then I become this target? Like what if my job gets audited and they see that they're employing a person with an expired work permit. So is it going to be my fault that it gets raided? Like what should I do? Who am I going to hide? Where am I going to, like I started asking myself all these questions and I saw it like a horror movie. So when I started writing it, without me realizing it, I was writing a horror, like I was adding horror elements into it. And that's when I Made in America, which ended up being the short film. Like maybe like the first 10 minutes of the actual bigger feature film is Made in America. And I added horror elements to it in the script. You don't get to see it as much, I think, on the short film, as much as I wanted you to see it, like it is in the script, because there was going to be scenes of a lady. There was supposed to be another character of a lady that the protagonist Santiago walks into getting yelled at, and he advocates for her to not listen to her lion leader. But that same lady comes back during the raid, and she's hiding behind some pallets, and she's like on the phone calling her kids, like saying like, "Hey, ya se levantaron, ya desayunaron. I might not make it home," and then she gets like dragged. So you just hear her scream, and like there was just so many things that I couldn't film because there was COVID, lack of participation from people. So there was a lot that was left off in that short film. And then I started submitting it to film festivals. All by myself, I didn't have any guidance. This was way before I met the collective. So I didn't know any other undocumented filmmakers. I didn't even know any other Latino filmmakers, to be honest. This was before I was a bit more active on social media. I knew that in order for me to submit these to submit Made in America into film festivals, I needed funding, which I didn't have. And also, I know that one of the rules about submitting to a film festival was that for certain festivals, you're not allowed to have your short film be on social media or on YouTube. So I'm like, so how do I show this project that my community has been waiting for to my community? And that's when I was like, you know what? When I was doing that, I was watching Insecure. I don't know if you've ever seen it. And then I was in maybe the third season of when Issa transitions doing into becoming a cultural curator. And that's when she started making events for the block. And her like seeing her grow inspired me. And I'm like, wow, like I want to do that with my short film. So I got inspiration from her and her show. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get a permit from my city park. I'm gonna get insurance for it and I'm gonna rent a big outdoor theater because this was 2021, like at the beginning of 2021. So COVID was still a very serious thing. And so I'm like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do it as a drive-in theater type of event. We do have a drive-in theater where I live, but they weren't responsive, and I think that's because they don't know me. And obviously, it's in it's mainly for Americans. It's like an English uh movie theater. So so then I did mine. I promoted it. So many people came. The park was just packed with cars, and it was just the first time anyone has done that in my community. Like somebody that made a movie about the community, even if it was only 10 minutes. And then I showed Bajo la Misma Luna right after. So I really liked it. And then that kind of let people know how serious I am about being a filmmaker. And that's when I started receiving way more support than what I already was. And that's when I got donations. Pretty much what I invested on the event, I got it back. And that same money was also given to me by donations, by my friends, by other people in the community. So I'm like, you know what? This is maybe close to $1,000, but I know I'm gonna need more. So I'm gonna invest on some t-shirts. And that's when the merch came. And then that's when I started gaining a bigger audience because of the merch, because people just wanted to support me and they liked the artwork that came with it. So I submitted it to maybe 33 film festivals, 2021 and part of 2022. I didn't get selected for any of them. Um, and then in 2023, I was finally selected to get it spotlighted at the Newark Latino Film Festival, which was my first time ever having a public screening of Made in America. And I really liked it. I really like it felt good getting that recognition because I felt like maybe my film wasn't good enough. And also I like the fact that that specific film festival had people that are activists, people that are community advocates, but like people that are involved in the community were invited to not only be part of the film festival, but to actually come and watch the films. So Made in America was perfect for that audience. So I really liked it. But that's when I was kind of giving up with the short film because I'm like, well, I received the spotlight and I really liked it, but I just feel like all the ones that I submitted to that could have opened many doors for me. I don't know, maybe it's not good. I mean, like I was just having so much self-doubt. And then every time I tried starting a new project with all these other scripts that I have, something always happened in my community. And I felt the need to be part of this part of the movement. Like in 2021, in New Jersey, the bill went into effect, allowing undocumented people to apply for a driver's license. So here I go joining that, being part of that movement and helping out as many people as I could. 2022, I tried to get back in it, but then that's when we had something else in New Jersey called the Excluded Workers Fund, which was money, which was funds for undocumented people that have ITINs but didn't get a stimulus check. And then this was also, like it wasn't a lot of money, but it was good money, money that they deserve. And I was involved in that as well. Um, Late 2022, which is when I wrote Jornalero. and I wanted to start the pre-production part of it. Everything was going well. I was meeting people. I was meeting people that were interested in being part of the project. But then my dad passes away, and then that just makes me step away for like a whole year, and I wasn't doing anything for maybe majority of 2023, other than having the Newark Latino Film Festival. But I wasn't writing. I wasn't doing anything. Like I just didn't have the energy to write. And then I started writing again in 2024 because I started to feel better. I started traveling maybe once, twice a month. And that helped me out a lot because it reminded me of why I do this work in the first place and why it's important to network and to meet new people and to tell your story. And me traveling took away the anxiety. It took away the depression that I had. And then I began writing again. I think when I went to LA, when I went back to LA in 2024, um, that just healed me completely because it was just so good being around so many positive people, especially organizers, other filmmakers, the collective. And but prior to me going to LA, one of my friends from El Consulado de Mexico here in Philadelphia, she was encouraging me to submit my short film to a film festival. It was a pretty brand new film festival. It's called the Kaleidoscope, and I didn't know anything about it other than it was its second year, and it was free. So I'm like, I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt to submit it. I mean, I don't have any high expectations that it's going to be selected. Um, so I submitted it, and then in August they started sharing El Jurado, who was part of the jury. And I was like, oh, this is a pretty serious festival because it has Eugenio Caballero, who's a set designer. He won an Academy Award. Um, it has the writer Bajo la Misma Luna, and it had all these other people that I looked up, and they're pretty important people in Mexico. It also had Peter, who is a writer, a comedy writer, and I'm like, wow, like this is wow, like, well, if these people are the judges, then that means that my film is not going to be selected because I still felt like my film wasn't worthy. I don't know. I just had, because of my experience with not being selected, I just felt like my short film was just not, it was just not it. And that's when I get an email from the film festival. And I was like, nah, what? Like, are you guys going to tell me that I'm not selected again? Like, I'm already used to it, you know? So I open it and it says, congratulations. And I was like, oh, I'm like, okay, maybe I did get selected. So I opened it and there wasn't a selection email. It said, Estimado Edgar, felicidades. Like you've won the grand prize um of the festival, and that grand prize comes with this and this and that. And I was just so shocked and so happy and confused at the same time because like they liked it. I mean, the story must have touched their hearts or something because I really didn't think I was gonna get selected. I mean, or even win for all that. And I went to the first event, which was at the Wilson Center in DC. It was just so good talking about it. There was Mexican politicians there, other people that do stuff from Mexico. And it was so great because they told me that this was going to be part of 5 additional film festivals, two in Mexico and three and two more in the US. And one of them was at the Guadalajara Film Festival in LA. And that was honestly one of my that was such a great experience as well. And this is when I learned about the DCP because I had known about it before because somebody else wanted to screen my short film, but they wanted me to send them the DCP version of it, which I didn't have because I didn't even know what it was because they didn't teach us they didn't teach me that in school. So the digital cinema package is a file that bigger movie theaters use because of the format. There we go.
Yeah.
Because of the format. So if they ask you for a DCP package, just know that it's going to a really good film festival. Um, and so that was my first time struggling with that, even though they gave me time to give them the DCP package. And I was asking so many people, like, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do-" And so many people were telling me, well, I did this, I went to this website, but I just didn't trust myself to do it myself. But they ended up doing it for me at the end. So it all worked out. And and this is when I'm like, wow, I need to learn all of this because if I want to be, a filmmaker that can give advice to newcoming filmmakers in my community, I need to know these things. And then a few months later passed, and I submitted it to the Chicano Film Festival, the Chicano Hollywood Film Festival, which this was their first year doing it. And again, I submitted it with confidence. I'm like, well, maybe I'll get the same luck as I did with the previous festival and get selected. And I did. I got selected for that one too. But I couldn't go because of with everything going on. I just felt like maybe right now staying in my community is maybe the safest move for now for me. So I didn't go, but I saw pictures and it looked so beautiful. Look, they just look. I was getting FOMO.
It's so funny. I've talked about this with a lot of people, but like, as immigrant filmmakers, like our films go a lot of places, even though we don't sometimes. So
Mhm.
it's like it's very bittersweet. But I'm really happy that like in some way, like with that and with like this kind of program that you did, like you realized your confidence in that and that like, oh, there is an audience, like I just had to find it, like here it is, you know.
Mhm.
You're kind of you mentioned it, it was called Jornalero, now it's called like Hay algo en la finca. And you did that as part of the being, you know, not only have you found your audience, but you found this other writing community, right? The
Yeah,
Latinxorcists. So, you know, could you talk about your time with them and how Hay algo en la finca is going?
I learned about their page because they were having they Spooky Writers meetup. So for those of you that are familiar with La Lista podcast, and then you're a writer, screenwriter, follow them. Ruben is amazing. He interviews so many cool people like Tania does. And so I've always wanted to go to his writer meetups, but they always fall on dates where I can't go to LA because for some odd reason the tickets are they're just so expensive on on those dates. So for like the past 3 years that I've known him and the podcast, I've missed out on so many of these meetups. Um, Surprisingly, this past fall in 2024, I saw his post on Time that they were having a Spooky Writers meetup in October, and I was like, okay, that's a month away, so let me look at the tickets now, and the ticket was so cheap. It was $90 for just that weekend, and I was like, okay, like this is my sign to go, even if it's just for 2 days. Even if it's a 5 hour flight, I don't care. Like I really want to connect with writers in general, but specifically horror writers. So it was a collaboration between the podcast and the Latin Exorcist. This is when I met the leaders of of Latin Exorcist, and I met all these incredible and amazing horror writers, like Latino horror writers, and just listening to them talking about the script it just sounds so unique and movies that you learn from, like kind of like when I stopped writing horror as a teenager. uh the question that I had is, why am I going to continue to write horror movies without if I'm not if I'm not incorporating anything to the movement by doing this. But these writers, and then what I was listening from them, wow, like they're just so creative and they touch on real life issues, and and then this is real life horror. Like this is actually real life horror. Uh they're not like the slashers that we're used to, seeing. This is actually um what is that word called? Elevated horror. And And it was just so amazing and so inspiring to listen to these writers. And that's when I connected with one of the founders, and he had told me that if I ever wanted to join the community, that to just send them an email, they can put me on the email list. Um, and I kept wanting to do that for a while, but I'm like, but I'm terrible at giving feedback, and I know that a lot of their sessions, you read the script together, you give them feedback, but I'm like, maybe if I finish my script and I send it to them, that can be like my intro to the to their space. I'm like, because I'm terrible at giving feedback. Like I because I just like people's stories that when I read it, I feel like they don't have to change much. I'm terrible at giving feedback. So that's when I finished the new draft of my script and I submitted it to them, and they invited me to have the table read with them in, I think, in April. I think it was in April or May. And yeah, and it was incredible. It was, like finding your community where you don't have to explain yourself. And if anything, they're giving you feedback from different angles. And then also like hearing people tell you like, wow, like I actually like this story. Um, and obviously, listening to the constructive criticism and stuff like that. Like this is literally what I needed. This is literally what I needed.
No, I love that. And I think that, with feedback, I've been learning how to give feedback. For me, the biggest thing is like I always try to like pitch something and I have to be like, okay, they're not looking for pitches like and where is the line of like how much you can pitch versus like just giving like critical feedback. But I'm really happy that that space like opened that up for you. And I also want to join some of their meetings, mostly just like to give feedback. Like I don't really have like a horror script that I'm writing, but I love the genre. Like I'm working on a horror feature now as a producer, and I'm like, maybe I can give something back, right?
Yeah.
But also La Lista podcast, shout out. I love listening to it as well. So, and I've also it always like, yeah, for me it's the same. The writers meetups just have never lined up with the date that I can go. But yeah, like there's so many communities, and that's really like also who will give you that confidence
Mhm.
to create and be like, okay, there's this again, like activism in creating, there's this resistance in creating, there's this community care when we create so that we can keep doing the work. So I really enjoy that, and I'm really glad that you found that as well. So, next question, I do want to like shift it over to, Summerween. This is Summerween season. And for people
Mhm.
who don't know, that's like horror and summer, outside of Halloween, what are the horrors of our world? So what do you think of that relationship? What are you doing to celebrate or have done to celebrate Summerween? And what are some of your favorite types or like pieces of media that have to do with summer?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I learned about it a year ago. But there was a trend on TikTok, but it was mainly for horror filmmakers, I want to say, or at least what I was seeing last year. Um, but I didn't appreciate it as much as I do this year. I feel like last year I just liked watching the videos. Um, but this year I'm enjoying it because it just allows us to celebrate horror all year. Because you have Summerween, you have Creepmas.
I hadn't heard about that one, but yeah.
And you have the regular Halloween. So Creepmas is like Halloween and Christmas. It starts right after Thanksgiving, and it's just an excuse to be in the horror spirit in the winter. Um, and that's when I started appreciating it. Once I got introduced to Creepmas last year. That's because I'm like, wow, like this is such a great market right now, and but it's missing something. I'm like, it's too Americanized. So if I can do something and add my little seasoning to it and do something in these traditions and these new traditions, for like a Latino audience, then I'm gonna do it. And that's when I just started, looking at different things that I can do. And I'm like, I need to take advantage for when summer starts and do something for Summerween, because I just know And I have a feeling that because Creepmas was so popular, I just have a feeling that Summerween is going to be more popular because they're already initiating it like in December. So I just know people are gonna get excited about the summer. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people started joining the trend right away, like in May. They were counting down the days for summer to come and sharing what they did a year ago for Summerween. And it's just so cool because it's like an excuse to have friends over, watch a horror movie either indoors or outdoors. I like the outdoors more. They set up like a screen outside. Um, there's people that they watch Jaws in their pool. There's people that watch the slashers and then they decorate their yards with like the horror stuff. Um, and they make these treats like cupcakes or cookies, or even burgers shaped into like the jack-o'-lanterns. And then for Summerween, instead of having a jack-o'-lantern, you have a watermelon crave or a piña or pineapple crave. So it just looks like a fun time. I own a few outdoor movie screens. And so I'm like, okay, in order for me to desarrollar this future project that I have going on, um, why don't I practice by doing a summer wing night for my friends at my house? So I got excited and I made the invitation. Just making the invitation was so much fun because it allowed me to be creative freely. And I sent it to my friends and they got excited about it. But I gave them specific orders that they have to come dressed as camp counselors so that we can stick with the vibes of Summerween. And I told them that we're gonna watch an 80s slasher. And they were like, okay. And I was like, and I have a special presentation for you guys as well. I wanted to have like a photo booth so that we can have these memories of us as camp counselors, but with like little strips of photos with the background of the invitation, like Summerween 2025, so that maybe if I create content about it, I can perhaps offer it to like a broader audience and have like a bigger event. But yeah, so my friends came. I set up the smaller screen, um, and I introduced them to a project that I've been working on, which is an outdoor movie theater, and I wanted to give them the full experience of what an actual movie theater I want to have. So I gave them maybe like 5 trailers before the movie started. 5 trailers of 5 independent horror films. And I introduced them to what an independent horror film is. I mean, what an independent film is and why we should support independent filmmakers because I'm an independent filmmaker. And these are stories that you can tell without asking permission. You don't have to, yeah, it's not like the studios that limit you on what you're allowed to talk about. And also because to me, it just reminds me of grassroots organizing for some reason. And so my friends, so I got them hype with all the trailers. They were Latino horror movies, well, Mexican horror movies, a movie from Guatemala, and I think a movie from Spain, if I remember. And then I showed them an intro, like a little short film on my project, which is going to be called Nahuales Cinema, which is going to be an outdoor theater, showcasing independent films and showcasing independent filmmakers and providing a space for filmmakers like me that feel like we're submitting to so many film festivals, but we haven't actually had the opportunity to be screening our films with an audience. And I have so many ideas with this project, and in fact, that's like my logo in the background. And also because I wanted to do something that can allow me to express my love for horror, for the horror genre. Because I already have a platform which is called Voices of the Soil, but that already has its own mission, which is to change the narrative um, of farm workers and actually celebrate farm workers, actually tell real and authentic stories of why these are workers, like these workers son unos chingones, and that's what I want to do with that platform.
When you were saying like it still feels like organizing, it's like, yeah, because there was, and I mentioned this before, it was like the Teatro Campesino like worked in the same way, whereas like theater to the campos is like camposine, like that's like the mission of it. And I think it's really cool that you've done this and like it just stems, from your love of horror. Do you have like a favorite like Summerween movie, or what movie did you screen this first time around?
So I wanted to give my friends. The thing is that once you're older, you realize that 80s slashers are not good.
It's very campy. Like it's camp in all the
Yeah.
senses. Like it's so bad, but like it's kind of good.
And so I'm like, I mean, like I enjoy them, but I'm like, my friends are gonna, they're just going to, not appreciate it the way I do. So my friends had already seen The Nightmare on Elm Street. And that movie was good. They've already seen Friday the 13th. The first three movies are good. But I wanted to introduce them to something different. So I wanted to introduce them to a film that I always believed was like another version of the Joker from the 80s, and that's a Sleepaway Camp. And
Yeah, I watched that for the first time this year too. And
yeah,
like very interesting movie.
yeah. And the thing is that I haven't watched that movie since I was in eighth grade. So, but I always appreciated it, and I always appreciated the themes that it hit. And then when I watched it again with my friends, I was like, oh, I'm like, this movie had all these like other gruesome parts to it. I forgot all about that. And yeah, but they liked it, and then they want to watch the sequel because there's four parts to it. But they want to watch the trailers, like they want to watch more of the movies that I showed in the trailers. But my favorite submarine movie, it would have to be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003.
I haven't gotten to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a lot of zombie movies just because gore is like I need to get into it a little like it's just
No,
something
yeah,
about it.
you're
But
right. Yeah.
but so most of my horror has been like vampires and like slashers, which are still pretty gruesome, I think, and have like its own like set of gore. But I need to get into it because like I mean it's good also. Um, that's really cool. Yeah, so Sleepaway Camp is like it's one of those where like that last image, like it sticks with you forever because it's like shocking. And it's also one of those movies that is getting a lot of like, a lot of people revisit it now to like look at it in like from a modern perspective. Like I'm not gonna like spoil it, but like um yeah, it's just like you can take it and maybe it was very much of its time, and that says a lot of like how far
Mhm.
we've come now that we can like look back on it and stuff. And um yeah, overall it's a very good movie to be
Yeah.
honest. Like a solid like classic slasher.
That you made a great point about the gruesomeness of movies. They don't have to be all gruesome. And then that's why I had chosen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre of 2003. That's my favorite Summerween pick because that one, I mean, that one, the performance is just so good. The performance, the the fear in their faces and their voices when they're screaming, it's just such a scary sound that it just makes you scared for them, but it just makes you scared in general. And I'm always gonna prefer performance above gruesome.
Very true, very true. And some performances can be gruesome, there is a world where that exists as well.
Yeah.
So my next question is like a segment. You're one of the most interesting people on my timeline. But can you tell us and give us a list of some of the most interesting people on your timeline?
Yeah. Yes, of course. I mentioned one of them, two of them already, which is La Lista podcast. I'm always I try to stay on top of everything that they share because they share resources for writers. They have the writers meetup, and these are just opportunities that we should pay attention to because you never know when you're gonna meet that one friend that's gonna open so many doors for you or mention your name in a space full of opportunities. And I always say that to people. Um, Another one is the Keach Center. It's in California. It's like a and it's an art museum that features Chicano art. And it's just so good because their marketing is so nice. And I love paying attention to all of the content that they share. Um, but one of my favorites, because one thing about like I mentioned earlier, I like to be extra with my stuff and I like to do stuff intentionally. You know, I love art. I love showcasing art and everything that I do. One of my favorite people that I follow because of their branding is Illegal Drip. Like
Yes, he's
like
been on the podcast. We love
yeah.
Bo.
So Bo is just so artistically talented, unapologetic. I have him on I have him pinned. So every time he uploads something, I like yeah, I have to watch it because he's just so creative. And and we've met in person, such a cool person, so humble, full of ideas, full of positive feedback. And then you need that. And another person who again I also have her pinned because but if you're undocumented, you should be following this person. Um Su plataforma se llama Y Tiene Papeles. So my homegirl Maria, she is so funny. So she does memes of you know, kind of like about our trauma as immigrants. And you know, because we're allowed to, you know, to talk about it like in a comedic way. I mean, I feel like sometimes kind of like I said earlier, when I was having a bad day and I was just questioning God, like like anything else, like are you gonna give me another obstacle? Um yeah, Maria, she's just so funny. And everything that like all of the music she makes are just so funny and so honest and no sugarcoating. And I met her in person and if you think she's funny on social media, she's even funnier in person.
I follow her as well. Like I'm like sometimes I just need she's just funny and I just need to know what she's gonna say today.
Yeah.
Um, that's so cool. I feel like your timeline, my FYP is like mine because like I was like, yep, all of these people, yes. Um, Another question I had, another segment. It's called Back in Timeline. So could you share your favorite online memory or like a favorite era of being online?
Yes, my favorite era was definitely MySpace because MySpace it was introduced to me when I was in sixth grade. Um, my cousins they already had their computer. You know, back then you would use the computer to actually log into your social media. So my cousins they already had MySpace, but I didn't have MySpace because I didn't have access to internet. I didn't have a computer. But my cousins had created one for me. And then when I did get my computer, that's when I was in there every single day. Kind of like we are on TikTok or on Instagram, and just creating your profile and and being able to also be your own creative self in a way. Because I remember I had to learn how to make my own profile. Like I had to learn how to design it. I don't even know how I was learning these codes. I don't even know how the girls that I knew these codes because like these girls that like they could have been tech, they could have been into tech right now because of the amount of codes that they knew how to place the header here, how to play. Like I don't know, it was just it's so complicated now that I'm older. But MySpace in a way helped me shape up my identity here in my in my town. because obviously, you have the your screen name. Your screen name can be whatever you want. It can be your name. Not a lot of people had their name. A lot of people had like a quote or like something, but they didn't really have their name. And I can't remember what mine said, but so I live in New Jersey, and during this time, this was the era of Duranguense. So this is when I was introduced to the bailes. I mean, I had no business going to bailes at 12 years old. But we were going to the bailes, we were going to the jaripeos. Um, we were just living life in a very innocent way. Um, but I always loved the New York vibes. New York was the place that I would go many times a year, especially in the summer. I would spend a month, I think, every summer in New York. And that's when I was introduced to Cumbias Sonideras. And I was introduced to the life in New York, which if you have family in New York or if you have friends in New York, you already know what the vibes were back then. The Jordans, the sidekicks, the bangs, um, the cumbias, all of that, the glasses. Like you were able to identify who was from New York. The North Face backpack. So I always wanted to be part of that because even though this was the era of the Duranguense and during my introduction to MySpace, I felt like I wasn't cool enough to dress vaquero, even though my brother would dress vaquero, my dad would dress vaquero. I felt like I wasn't cool enough because I was already 12, and if I wanted to dress vaquero, I would have been dressing as a vaquero like longer. So I felt like I wasn't cool enough to dress like that. So that's why I identified more with New York because I felt like I'm somewhat a New Yorker. And because of that, many of the trends that we saw on MySpace were from people from New York. And there was a specific time when New York they were starting with the nicknames, like esa smiley, esa traviesa, this and that. So my cousins and I, we wanted to join the trend, and we were thinking of nicknames for ourselves all night. And then that's when my cousin was like, "Oh, like I have a perfect nickname for you." And I was, "Oh, what is it?" He was like, "Your nickname should be Spikey." And I'm like, "Spikey?" But isn't that like a isn't that what the dog's name in Rugrats? They were like, "No, that's Spike." And I'm like, "Well, it sounds the same." So at first I was like, "You know what? Yes, like, you know, let's do it." But I was so shy because I'm like, what if people really do start calling me that? Or what if people start making fun of me for that nickname? So this was over the weekend. We did it on Friday night. Monday, and in school, my friends started calling me Spiky. And then on MySpace, everybody started calling me Spiky. And then when I would see my like people that I knew, when I would see them at church or at the bailes or anywhere in town, they'll start calling me by my nickname. And I'm like, is this what it feels like to be cool? I mean, I don't know. And so, eventually MySpace, it went, they went ghost. Oh, sorry. The reason why I was called Spiky was because I had really spiky hair. So I had hair like a porcupine, pretty much, like Pauly D. And then I kept the haircut my freshman year. So freshman year, that's when I was introduced to Facebook, and that's when I put my real name on my profile. But people were still calling me Spikey. So when I cut my hair off the end of freshman year, people were still calling me Spikey. And till this day, everybody calls me Spikey. Even my friends' parents call me Spikey.
The real world implications of a life online.
Even LA, even my new friends in LA, they all call me Spikey now.
Dude, that's so funny. And I feel like, I mean, you were talking about like the girls that had learned HTML for the
Yeah.
MySpace, the Tumblr girls as well. Like, I missed MySpace. My cousin had MySpace. I don't know why I just never got into it. I think it's because I was on YouTube instead, and YouTube kind of worked like MySpace at the time. It was very customizable and stuff. But yeah, like the way you get street cred from your online persona
Yeah.
then is very different to like online or like clout nowadays, right? Um, it used to be a lot more fun.
No, because I think it was a very great skill that as kids we didn't realize how smart we were.
Yeah, and also, I mean, back in the day, it wasn't like monetized. So it's like you were getting street cred just to get respect or like to be cool.
Yeah.
Like you weren't doing it for money. It wasn't a brand like it was a like your vibe is immaculate and people like it and you're getting recognized or whatever. I think that's somehow how some of the like Jersey Shore cast got cast is like they were just really big online for free, which I think is cool. Um, and like you just talked about being called Spikey. But did you have like a past screen name that you also remember, or like did you incorporate Spikey into all of your screen names? What are some of the origins?
Wow. I feel like I answered this last time when we spoke. What did I say? I don't remember.
It was Spikey, like that's how you kind of came up with it. So you kind of answered that question already.
Yeah, because yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, that was my screening for MySpace. And like I said, it gets stuck with me all these years. People still call me that. You leave the hood, but the hood doesn't leave you. And well, as I got older, I started using my name way more. My full name, Edgar Aquino-Huerta, especially Huerta because Huerta just carries a very significant power because you have leaders like Dolores Huerta, who I've looked up to since I was 14 in El Campo. Um, Tenoch Huerta, who's one of my favorite actors, who I like to people to and say that he's my uncle. Um, Diego Huerta, who is an amazing photographer. Um, so many Huertas that are just some like very badass people.
I love that. I always remember that Tena Torta joke with you. Um, and is there anything, cool in your future? Like what's coming up for you? Something cool that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I shared a little bit about it earlier, about this project about Nahuales Cinema. Um, and it's a very again, it's kind of like Issa Rae. It's like no matter what stage in your life you're entering, um, you always go back to your roots. And she went back to nonprofit, to like grassroots organizing. And I haven't left that yet. But even though I was planning on retiring from that eventually, um, I'm not. I'm actually bringing it with me to this journey of opening up my own mobile theater because that's kind of how I got the idea in the first place. Like um, we have a we have a little small movie theater in my hometown. Um, but I think it got burnt down like back in the 70s. So it's just been sitting there for all these years. And then I've always looked at it when I was little because I'm like, this would be such a better, like, I'm a more fun town if the movie theater was open. Especially if, it was available in Spanish for my parents, for my family members. Um, and ever since I was a little boy, I'm like, when I'm older and I have money and I'm rich, I want to buy it and I want to open up my own movie theater. Um, but that was just a dream that I had that as a kid, maybe once I got older, maybe it wasn't as meaningful anymore. But now that I'm older and now that I'm now that I'm looking at the theater, for the past 3 years, I'm like, I really want to grow as a filmmaker, and I want to have secure funding so that I can have something to reopen that theater and to reconstruct it. And so, like I said, I already had experience making events for films because of the event that I did for mine. And I did something similar for a friend who's actually in the collective as well, who lives in Mexico, for Lalo. And he was seeking support so that they can secure funding for mothers that are being deported to Mexico. And it's a collaboration between a film school and an organization in Mexico. So, I'm like, yeah, of course I'll help. And I didn't have that many days to plan it because the deadline was in like 10 days, I believe. Um, but I secured the location, I promoted it. Everything just felt so easy to me because I had already done it. And when I did my event for my screening of my film um in 2021, I specifically did it on a Saturday at night, obviously because it has to be done under the stars. But I did it because I wanted the farm workers that I connected with to come, and that includes my former coworkers. But many of them couldn't come, and that's because lack of transportation, um, or because maybe they're still working, especially because my event in 2021 was like at 7 p.m. I think, or 8 p.m. because it was February or March, so it was getting dark earlier. Um, but this time I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. It's gonna be indoors, but I'm gonna do it late, like at 7 p.m. on a Saturday, so that hopefully this time, the farm workers can come because many of them don't come out of the farms that they work because they live there as well. So only two of them came, but I was very happy that they came because I'm like, well, I mean, at least two came, right? And it was two of the young farm workers. And then, I went up to them at the end and they congratulated me. And they said that they've never seen these type of movies before because the three short films that I screened, they were all independent short films. And, obviously they hit very serious topics, topics that aren't normalized as much. And they really liked it. They said that they didn't even know movies like this were allowed to be made. And I'm like, well, this is why it's important to support independent filmmakers because we can tell the stories like we want them. And then I was telling them, I'm happy that you guys came. I would have really loved for the other ones to come. And they were like, yeah, but they're older, so it takes them longer to get ready and they're tired. And then I'm like, well, then maybe I guess next time I have to bring the movie to them if since they couldn't come here. But this was just me saying it normal. Like I didn't really think too much of what I was saying. And then the guys were like, oh, like you can actually do something like this at the farm. And I'm like, you mean like to set up a movie screen and show you guys a movie? Like one of these? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I can. Like actually I actually can do that. I'm like, yeah, I can. And then I just kept like so many things started making sense in my brain. And I'm like, hold up. Yeah, like I can actually do that for you guys. And then that's when the idea came that taking movies to people is a creative and unique way to introduce your community to new things and to art and to stories that just need to be told.
Yeah, and I remember it's called like Dignidad in Motion, I believe.
Yeah,
And that series, and that's super important. And I also link down in the description the organizations because they're doing some really cool work, and those movies were really awesome. That they were very unconventional indie Mexican cinema that is being
yeah.
shown in the U.S. So I mean, yeah, your work and Lalo's work is freaking awesome, and I believe Maggie also was a part of that. So shout out to them too. And yeah, like I mean, I'm really excited to see how that comes along and how the screenings go. Again, I think it's very important, kind of like everything that you've mentioned, and um, I'm like, ah, I hope it goes national. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well that's the plan. Like right now, obviously, I want to launch it maybe in the fall. Right now I have five farms secured so far that I'm gonna take the movie theater to. Obviously I'm gonna show them my short film first because many of them have been wanting to watch it. And like I told them, a movie is meant to be seen in a big screen with good sound and a good picture because like that's just that I'm because I told them I'm like, trust me, when the movie's over and you see it in a very dark place with a great quality picture and great sound, trust me, like as soon as the credits roll, you're gonna feel something here. And I'm like, and I want you guys to feel that. So I'm gonna show them my short film. And then I'm obviously gonna talk to them about their rights because right now that's very important. And I feel like um this is the perfect space to do that. And then I'm gonna show them a movie of their choice. Like I gave them a whole list of movies that I think are good, that they would like. So I'm having them choose which one they want to watch. And right now I'm just gonna start creating, like the content so that when I do launch it, I at least have, you know, um, these nice videos that I can share of what I've been doing and what I want to do.
Period. And that's important to like because I'm assuming you can also show like movies in Spanish and stuff, and like that's not something that is, at least where I'm from, like we didn't have that. Like I think the only one we ever watched in the theaters that was in Spanish was Instructions Not Included. And that was so good that
Yeah.
like we finally had something, you know. Um,
No, well, that's also the main reason why I wanted to do this because as I was doing surveys on people, many people, many Spanish speaking folks don't go to the movies. And they do go, but the movies offered are not Spanish dubbed. They just have the Spanish subtitle. So there's just people that just don't feel like reading subtitles throughout the whole movie. And this is another reason why I think this project is very important because now I can bring my community movies in Spanish, but also give them the experience of what a movie theater for Latinos can be. And that's also me bringing in the branding. This is and I love the branding that my artist did for me because this is gonna be stuff for like popcorn buckets and then soda cups, merch, blankets, like all these cool things. And I just want my community to feel represented in in any way, in every way.
you always bring it with the branding, I will say. I will even with Made in America, like that PR kit was really good.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, we're wrapping up our interview, but before that, like where can people find you online? Like where can your work be found?
Yeah, so um I have my I have my personal page where I share most of the things that I've been doing. It's and on Instagram, mainly Instagram for now. Aquino-Huerta, that's for Instagram. Um my Voices of the Soil platform, which I'm gonna pick up pretty soon. I have all these amazing things that I want to do with it. Is Voices of the Soil underscore. And now my new page, which is still blank. It has the logo already, but I haven't uploaded nothing yet. If you want to start following me there as well, because that's gonna be maybe the most creative page that I'll be running, where I'm gonna where I'm gonna demonstrate how creative I can be. Um, it's Nahuales Cinema on Instagram.
Everyone needs to follow that and stay tuned for that. And before I let you go, are there any last words that you have for the audience, or just any lasting thoughts?
Yeah, like I said it before, um, please come out of your comfort zone, network, be organic with yourself, and like please be organic with your stories as well. Let's not create stories, but the audience that are not, people that are not from your community. Um, but we all have our target audience, so we shouldn't be seeking validation from people that are not from our community. So be as true to yourself as you can. Um, please do not take constructive criticism negatively. Trust me, it's for our own good. Like trust me, they just shapes up your story and your script better. Um, and like I said, be true to yourself and be nice to people. And because you never know, you're gonna meet that one friend that's gonna create a podcast and it's gonna invite you to be one of their guests. Like Tanya.
Really, it's a community ecosystem here. But thank you so much, Edgar, for speaking with me today, like for all the work that you do. I'm very excited to see like one, your cinema come to life, but also like your films come to life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Stay
Yeah,
tuned for that too. If everything goes well, I want to hope that we will start shooting Hay algo en la finca hopefully this year. Um, we're actually going to start moving into the pre-production part tomorrow. So, and I'm gonna try to do a bunch of cool things to gain funding. So I'm gonna start selling merch and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that too.
all of Edgar's work is linked in the description, and you can head over to taniadoes.com/Edgar for all show notes. Make sure to follow Edgar and his work to see all the good and spooky things that he gets up to. And also, make sure to follow me, your host, on Instagram and TikTok at Tania Does, and subscribe to my YouTube channel to stay up to date on this series. The Most Interesting People on My Timeline is an independent podcast hosted and produced by yours truly, Tania Dominguez Rangel, with design support from Maida Sanchez. To support our work, consider joining our membership base at Buy Me a Coffee, and if you've got the big bucks, we are open to ad slots as well, so we can keep this going and introduce y'all to more interesting people. In our season finale, I'm going to introduce you to an up-and-coming writer and director who I may or may not be working on a feature horror film with. Stay connected, stay creating beautiful things, and I'll catch y'all in the next episode.